Right, well, our next guest says the European crisis has had a positive impact on his company. Joining us is Tom Eshelby. He's Director of Residential Property at Land Securities. Land Securities is Europe's second biggest property developer with over $20 billion in assets. The company is building the so-called walkie-talkie office tower in London's financial district, or second financial district, Canary Wharf. Right, Tom, thanks for coming along.
My pleasure.
Where's the investment in Britain, where's the property investment in London coming from, principally?
Well, we've seen an awful lot of investment over recent years coming out of Southeast Asia. Hong Kong is one of our most established markets, has been for several decades now, and we expect that to continue over the coming years.
Is it a good time to be buying there?
In London, I think it is still a very good time to be buying in London. It's hard to think of a time in recent memory when it hasn't proven to be a good time to invest into London, and we see continued demand, certainly from the international markets.
All right, well, where else, which other countries are the principal investors here in this part of the world?
Into London, we've seen over recent years a trend from some of the European investors, wealthy individuals, taking their money perhaps out of Italy, Greece, Spain,
for obvious
and into
reasons.
London. For obvious reasons, yes.
So it's made the market hot.
I think
right?
so. London has earned its reputation, I think, as a safe haven in a storm. We have seen continued, consistent performance in terms of capital values and also in terms of rental income. Allied to that, we've also a fairly benign economic and fiscal setup, so I think investors find that attractive.
Now, is it just London, or is money going elsewhere into Britain?
Well, I'm sure money is going elsewhere into the UK, certainly in the property sector. My focus is on central London, high-end, luxury residential property, and that is a good marriage with international investment. So we see mainly a focus on central London.
Okay, where else is really hot at the moment in Europe? I've heard Berlin's property prices have been soaring, haven't they?
Yeah, look, there are other centres, Frankfurt, Paris continually claims that demand is growing. I do think, though, overall in Europe, London holds really a unique position there as a sort of cultural hotspot across the whole globe, and it's pretty much unrivaled.
Is that central London is what we're talking about here, the SW3s,
Absolutely.
the SW10s and SW1s?
Land Security's
high-end, yeah?
High-end. Land Security's whole focus is in the sort of golden postcodes of central London, so Belgravia and Knightsbridge. Our focus is Victoria, which sits right next to those, and that represents a really good sort of opportunity for investors, both UK investors and internationals.
What about commercial property, given the downturn that we're seeing across Europe?
Commercial property has had a relatively flatter recovery over the last few years versus residential. Land Securities, obviously the largest commercial propco in the UK, but our operations continue across London and indeed across the rest of the UK.
Yeah, but Tom, if we look at what's happening as far as the market goes there right now, well, you know, is it transparency, which is one of the key things that people look at from Asia when they're buying in Britain? Or
I absolutely think that transparency is a key factor here. Issues such as stamp duty, issues such as taxation systems and so forth, they're known. And I think being known, investors feel confident that they can put their money into there on maybe a 10-year term and have a real accurate feel for what the landscape's going to hold for them.
But the thing is, what about demand from, well, Britons? How is that holding up? Because that's going to be key, isn't it?
It is. Certainly in London, one of the key factors is a constraint on new supply. And we are seeing that the UK house builder market is struggling to keep up with the demand from UK buyers. Certainly outside of London, that's more so the case.
Well, we've seen how Hong Kong property prices have been soaring over the last few years. How does the London market compare?
Well, the London market has recovered well since 2009, but forecasts generally for the next 4 years, circa 25–30% growth.
Tom, thank you for coming on.
My great pleasure.
Tom Eshelby there from Land Securities. Coming up with China's next generation of leaders in place, we'll have a look at the reforms that they may be putting